You can watch us on YouTube at Falls Area Community Government, or Twitter at FactTV8, or Facebook by typing in Falls Area Community TV. Fact TV Government Channel, keeping government honest.
Hey folks, this is Alex Stradling and this is your Fact TV update. So we have a lot of big things going on. So while you're waiting for the meeting, I'm just going to highlight some of the things that we have going on here at the station. The first big thing is we've had channel changes. So if you're a Comcast customer, we used to be on Channel 8 and Channel 10. Channel 8 was our public channel and Channel 10 was our government channel where you'd see all the municipal meetings. Now our channels have changed. So now on Comcast we're 1076 for the public channel and we're 1086 for the government channel. So if you're waiting for a meeting right now and you want to watch the meeting on cable TV, go to channel 1086. So channel changes. 1076, 1086, Comcast. All right, so moving on. The next big thing that we have is that we here at Fact TV have been working in partnership with the Bellows Falls Union High School, and we provide a little financial support so that they can purchase a fully automated remote cam to be installed into the basketball gym, which they installed at the Holland basketball gym. And now that gives us the opportunity to be able to broadcast all the Bellows Falls Union High School games. So this is very exciting news. We're not sure if they're going to have basketball this season. We still have to wait for the governor and what his decision is. But if they do start up basketball, we're going to be able to cover all the basketball games, the girls varsity, boys varsity, JV, all the basketball games. So this is really great news. If you want to be able to catch the basketball games this season and in the future, please go to our Facebook page, the new Facebook page that we created, and that's called Falls Area Community TV Bellows Falls Area Sports. Go to that page. That's where we're going to be broadcasting the basketball games. Like the page and follow it. Okay. So, moving on. Now, as you know, as you're waiting for the meeting to come on, we cover a lot of meetings. So we can't put every meeting live on our Facebook page. So I know a lot of folks go to our Facebook page and they may be looking for a meeting. We just don't have the amount of pages. We can't do multiple streams of multiple meetings on one page. So some of our content has to go to other Facebook pages or to our YouTube channel. So if you're looking for a meeting and you're on our Facebook page and it's not there, then what you can do is go to our YouTube channel. So go to YouTube, type in Falls Area Community TV Government, subscribe to our channel, and there you'll be able to find a meeting if you don't find it on Facebook. The other place that you can find it is if you go to our website, fact8.com, and click on, you go to our menu here, go to the menu, scroll down to Fact TV Live, okay, and this page will pop up, live meetings and events. And we have two players for that. So you could be one or the other meeting. So that's one way that you can view the meetings. All right? And while we're on our website, the last thing I want to present to you folks, a lot of people don't know what Fact TV is. They think that we're a news station. They think that we're a corporate TV station. We're not. We're none of those things. We're a nonprofit. We're a nonprofit media access center. We're here to help the community to produce their own content to broadcast out on cable. We have the tools, we have the equipment, we have the resources, we have the training. We're here to provide that to you to be able to produce content for television. So, also, to provide the platforms. So, if you want to air your content, if you're already producing stuff on Facebook, if you already have a video, if you already post videos on social media, and you want to maybe reach a local audience, a wider audience, you can submit your video to us and we'll distribute it on our pages and we'll put it on cable. And it's very easy to do. There's three ways that you can do that. First, you can either give me a call at 802-463-1613 and I can walk you over the phone how to do it. You can go to our website. This is the easiest way to do. Go to fact8.com. Here's our website. Click on the menu. Just like YouTube, just like Facebook, scroll on down, scroll, and to upload or submit your show. So, and then here you go. Just scroll on down and then hit submit video. Okay, and then fill out the information, and you're good to go. Now, the last thing I want to say, not to do, the last thing I want to say is, let's say you want to do a TV show. Let's say you've been doing it at home and maybe it's too much work for you to do, or you don't have the internet speed. Whatever the reason is, you know, you want to be able to do it more consistently, and you don't want to have to worry about the technicalities of producing the show. Well, we have our own studio here at Fact TV for you to use. It's for everyone in the community to use. All you have to do is call us up and schedule a time, or go to our website and hit Studio Services. We'll be able to broadcast or stream your show out to any platform that you want, Facebook, YouTube, whatever, TikTok, whatever new platform comes out, we'll be able to stream that out, and you'll go on cable. So you can call us, 802-463-1613, or email me at alex@fact8.com, or go to our website, www.fact8.com, and click on Studio Services. So yeah, there you go. That's it for our Fact TV update. You guys have a good week.
At this point, I mean, he didn't say anything to me, but
I
he
didn't
may,
hear from him, so
Make it easier on the camera.
might as well.
can balance the room.
Yeah, we're like just right here. Yeah. Okay. All right. So I believe we're running. Good evening and welcome to the Bellows Falls Village the trustees regular meeting. It's Tuesday, February 9th, 2021. And it's 6:02. We're down here in the Town Hall Lower Theater. Oh, hi, Wade. So now we have four out of 5 of us this evening. One of us is held up by snow this evening. I'd like to call the meeting to order, and we have approved the minutes of Tuesday, January 26, 2021. At least for discussion, would anyone like to make that motion?
I'll make the motion.
Okay, in a second? All right, thank you. All right, just further discussion on the minutes.
Yes.
Okay,
I have a problem with page 2. I had sent an email yesterday to the staff. Thought section 4 on page 2 was really not clear. I believe part A is talking mainly about 66 Atkinson Street, but I think a clearer summary of both what was discussed and what, if any, action was taken on both of those should be done. And secondly, on number 5, I take issue with the last sentence. The board asked their questions, and between Burbella and Pickup, they were answered. They were, we all agreed that there were a number of issues that needed to be reviewed and then reported back to us on. So they weren't, the issues weren't answered. And I think that, I think it should be clear that the board is expecting to hear back on several of the issues that were raised on the financials.
Right, and of course, based upon this information, we can't tell what those issues were as well. Further discussion.
Well,
I'm
I
sorry.
mean, I know what they are, but I mean, I don't think
Yes.
we have to. So I think that needs to be amended as well.
Amended as well.
So if you'd like, we can bring you a copy of the amended minutes and do it next meeting.
I think that would be the best way. Yeah.
Right. Also, the next to the last sentence on the back page says the board came out of executive session at 7:40 p.m. and no announcements were made or no action taken. It should say and no action taken. It wasn't either or, it was neither. So if those could be corrected, that would be great. So we're going to table the minutes at this point until the next meeting, and push them to the next meeting on the end of the month. Any additions to the agenda for routine administrative matters and or pressing matters that will require ratification at a future meeting?
We just wanted to bring, and I have asked Gary to come and talk about the Better Connections grant. It's not a warning for any financial obligation on behalf of the village, but there is some time constraints and there is some opportunity to do a joint application, which might help with our ultimate scoring and our. I'm sorry.
Sorry, I didn't put my microphone on. My apologies. So we wanted to add this to just the conversation. So Gary, maybe you could do a quick update just so the trustees understand. I think the planning commission folks have already heard of this and I think have gone through this. So it's really just a continuation of that conversation.
Okay, so Better Connections grant, it's a,
Wait, Gary, we're going to add that to the agenda, and I'm okay with putting that as number one if you
Yeah,
guys are. And
that's
we'll just
fine.
move the
That's
rest of it.
fine.
So you'll be
Oh,
the first
gotcha,
thing
okay.
after we get
Okay,
done
that would
with
be
the
great.
manager's report. Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome. All right. All right then. So public comment on items. Anyone out there interested in making a public comment? I don't see anybody. Who's handling the, is Shannon there this evening? No.
She is there. She was sick, so I think she's there, but not on.
Okay.
Hasn't.
I don't see her present.
She
but-
wasn't in the building today, so I don't think she's feeling well.
Yeah, according to this, there's only us and the Fact TV screen showing.
She was
so-
going to sign in just to monitor, but I don't believe anybody.
Right.
There goes our ratings.
There goes our ratings. They're in the tank.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like
What
the
do we gotta
Super
do? We gotta
Bowl.
do
We're going
something that
down.
agitates people. That's the only way that gets them to come to the meetings, even Zoom. Okay. So no public comment. Thank you. And manager's report.
Just a couple of items. We've started the very preliminary discussions with department heads on preparation of budget. One of the things we'll have to do is come back at our next meeting and talk about a calendar for budget. So one of the things I'm just asking trustees to think about is availability. If you wanted to have some additional meetings, if you wanted to handle it within your existing meeting schedule, we can certainly accommodate. If you have some travel plans, again, at some point we'll leave our COVID world and maybe venture out from our homes. And if you're thinking of doing that sometime between now and May, just, any time that you would not like us to schedule activity for, let us know. And at the next meeting, we will be talking a little bit more in detail about where we are with the budget. If you have some just general comments, that's always beneficial as we start the preparations. I always like to get a sense of where the board is in terms of their initial thoughts. And certainly, like anything, thoughts are subject to change over time, but it certainly helps everyone as we're going through the preparation process to at least get some input. So we'll be doing that at the next meeting.
Anything else?
No, everything else we're going to cover through the agenda. So
Okay. I did want to ask to see, it was on our minutes from the last one we haven't approved yet, on the status report on the traffic study. It said, oh, no, not that. My apologies. Westminster Terrace sidewalk crosswalk. I know that Wade had asked for an answer concerning the sidewalk plan, and it said pickup said he will look into it, but I didn't know if you've got any.
We did
further.
pull some of the original information just to see what was done on the site plan, so there wasn't anything that was missing from the original approvals from the planning commission and the submission. So the question is, I guess at this point, if we want to add any kind of additional pedestrian warnings or any other kinds of just general improvements. I know there's some concern during the snow, especially. That tends to be a place where snow gets piled, and it
Yeah.
creates a difficult area for people crossing or trying to cross at that location. So
That would be through any additional signage would go through the highway department, or would we handle the signage? I think actually there's some language in the ordinances for the village to handle some signage.
we could always add additional pedestrian warning. We
Maybe
could
during the
add-
winter, if, you know,
So it's just a question of, what's your pleasure? We can look into doing whatever you would like to try to increase the visibility and hopefully make it safer, for drivers to pay attention there.
did either of you have anything on that?
Yeah. So that all makes sense, but what I was thinking of, I was following up on what Select Board member Peter Golick had mentioned
Which was,
about the sidewalk, the crosswalk coming off Westminster Terrace.
yeah,
That there wasn't one, but there was one by the driveway of the new credit union,
right.
Determine it, right.
which, like he said, it really should be. He thought, my feeling is, check it out in the spring when everything's, and just determine whether that crosswalk should be moved.
Right, but, and I would say we'll have to kick it back to the highway and whether or not, what the MUTCD suggested when they put that in the first place, whether it can be moved. It has to be probably so many feet away from,
The active driveway there, and there's some other. Right.
exactly, so there might be some conditions under which they couldn't move it.
Right.
But, so again, that's a question for the select board, and maybe you'll.
And
maybe
the
you wanna
other part of that-
Talk to them at their next meeting.
The other
Put it
part
off
of
to
that,
the March 30th, the joint meeting, if you'd like to just
Yeah,
have a
that's
follow-up
not a bad idea.
conversation.
Let's do that.
You want to do that? That
Put
way
it on
we
the
can
joint
sort of
board.
get into it in more detail.
We can get an
Yeah.
answer, because you need
Okay.
some highway information, that department, in order to
Yeah.
make that determination on the crosswalk. Yes, because I remember there was a two-part conversation. We wound up off into the snow, but lost the crosswalk piece.
yeah, the sidewalk going up there, I actually looked at it since the last meeting, and I don't even think it's wide enough to put a sidewalk plow on.
Yeah,
I
don't-
I think it's under 4 feet.
Yep.
Think
I didn't
looked
walk
just
it, but I think visually, I think you're right.
visually, it looks like you couldn't even do that. So
There's some constraints there, but we should have the conversation, sort of see where everybody wants to
okay,
work on
So
that. So
joint
I'll add
board.
that to the agenda for the
joint
March
board.
30th.
Okay. I just wanted to cover that since it said we'd get something on that.
Okay. Yep.
All right, if we move on to the agenda, the first thing will be the Better Connections. Gary?
Okay, thank you. So the Better Connections Grant is a joint project between the Agency of Commerce and Community Development and the Agency of Transportation. So it's a unique, was started a few years ago as a demonstration project, combines economic development and transportation. And they didn't have one last year. They opened the round again this year. And this project would be a transportation master plan for the island and the under the hill area. So basically it takes the feasibility studies that we've done over the past 20 years, starting from a train station, Robertson Mill, the waterfront, and the streetscape plans. So there's improvements in the roads, there's sidewalks with separations of trees, there's utility enhancements that have to be made for the properties to be useful. There's pedestrian and vehicle access. For instance, some of the projects are developing a destination on the riverfront whose only access is a steep hill with no sidewalk around a curve that comes out blind in front of a train tunnel, while septic trucks, their only access is also on that road. So if you're walking down there with a stroller, it's not a safe situation. So that's an example of the work this will do is engineer vehicular and pedestrian access on the east side of the train tunnel. Um, let's see, what else about this? So some examples, the implementation in the short term would be roads, sidewalks, and utilities to the Robertson site for construction that will ideally be starting this fall, possibly spring of 22, but fall of 21 if it can move quickly enough. Other pieces of this engineering would come into play later for implementation. There's some long-term outcomes, such as the ones that I just described on the waterfront. And the legislature is working on a project-specific TIF plan. So this would give us the basis for the road work and utility work to get from the Waypoint and train station over to Robertson Mill for a TIF application. It coordinates well with the area-wide plan study that the town approved and put in for, which was awarded in January and will begin in April or May. The RFP is going out next week for the consultants. So it's a great opportunity, great opportunity to get this work done that we've been kind of laying the groundwork for a couple of decades in the island and the under the hill area. What else about it? There's also a clean water component. So storm water in the island is tough. It's an island in the middle of Connecticut River because it's a hunk of granite. And so environmentally friendly ways of treating storm water where the stormwater drains in Island Street aren't deep enough. Water comes up out of them because of the granite. So this also provides $30,000 that doesn't require a match for advanced environmentally friendly stormwater treatment, for engineering for creative ways to treat stormwater because it's right on the river and it's a clean water initiative. I do have a resolution if the trustees are open to that. So the town will be asked to submit the grant next week and to match the grant. There's extra competitive points for intermunicipality, and because there will be sewer and water planning as part of this, we thought it would be a good opportunity for the village to participate and add some competitiveness to the grant application.
So we will be looking to pass the resolution this evening, actually, because this is going to happen before the joint board.
Because of time pressures, yes. The grant is due a week from Friday. It's due on the 19th, the application.
If we do this, we would ratify it at the next meeting. So we just resolve that we are okay with it. Can I show that? My signature's already on here from the planning commission because I'm the chair of that.
He has one of those.
right
I had 3.
Oh, you have one? You
yeah,
do?
yeah.
Okay. Sorry about that. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Gary, that when I was on the BFADC and we were working on the Robertson paper
Yep.
Property, there had been a previous study or plan done for the island.
Yes.
Okay. And we had a lot of problems with it because it was kind of a, strolling park and this and that. And there was no real emphasis on jobs, whereas the driving force of our work on the island was to create an opportunity for hopefully job creation here in the village and in the town of Rockingham. And you referenced here taking a bunch of these prior studies and kind of pulling them together. But I think my concern is what is the focus? What is the primary focus on this thing? Is it consistent with redevelopment, better environment, and job creation? Because I think that should be a key part of our discussion whenever it relates to, particularly to the island, The down under, I imagine, is down the hill from where the
Yes.
sewer treatment plant is. But,
Exactly, yes.
but anyway, so that would be that's my only question here.
Sure, and that's a great question, Jigs. What this plan does, the Transportation Master Plan, it identifies the connectivity, both pedestrian and vehicular, between the neighborhoods to the downtown, to the under the hill area and to the island, parking areas. It basically asks these questions. And when I say it takes the studies that are done over the past 20 years, of course, they're all different studies done at different times, and as you described, with different focus, like the job creation at the Robinson site, which might conflict with some pieces of that particular revitalization study. So the job of these guys is to have a robust public engagement process where BFADC is involved, BIFTA is involved, the chamber is involved, the trustees are involved, the select board, community, the Abenaki. Because they're state and federal funds, they're really rigorous about the public participation part, and they were really clear about, in order to be competitive, your work plan should show at least 5 intersections of public engagement. So part of that is taking these different studies and saying, okay, here's what we have. What really makes sense out of these? What pieces of these make sense? And how does they encourage things like like Larry brought to BFADC, where in the future there's less cars, we need less parking, say, at particular sites, and more aggregated parking. So, for instance, for jobs in the island, they might be identify the Bridge Street parking lot to improve and have a level that comes straight out from the other BFADC property, the 10 Island Street. Instead of having every property have to have 20 or 30, like if you're going to have 30 jobs at Robertson Paper, if you park 30 cars there for workers, then right there you're losing the ground to have manufacturing space. So so they want to have the conversations, take those pieces into account, and where there's train stations and passengers, where there's manufacturing facilities and jobs, where there's a working gristmill museum and a waterfront that's destination oriented. They want to have the appropriate transportation connections for each site. So that's why they first take the studies and assimilate them. They present what they find to the community, to the stakeholders. They ask for input, and they refine those so that the transportation master plan fits the purposes of the property. So, and those aren't known beforehand. So that's part of the community engagement process, where we talk about the job creation on the island versus the destination-oriented riverfront, and have appropriate transportation connections for each end vision.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's fine. I appreciate it.
So we would need a motion for the resolution.
I have just one more question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to clarify.
Sure.
Under the hill.
Yep.
That's down there.
Yeah, so at the end of towards the end of the 1800s, when they took the canal and broke it up into tributaries, they took the locks out when the railroad came through, made tributaries to power the Adams Grist Mill, and started building the paper mills there, the William Russell Mill, which where International Paper started, and they called that Under the Hill, where all the paper mills were built up. And
Old
it's
name,
down
yeah.
below Westminster Street.
We haven't used it in quite a long time, right? So.
See, Deborah is over the hill.
Just like my.
Well, maybe
my
that came out
foot
wrong, but
Okay.
Oh, dear.
Any further discussion? Would anyone like to make a motion to sign the resolution?
I'll make the motion that we sign the resolution for the Better Connections grant.
I'll second that.
Okay. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor, oh, wait, who signed it?
So there's a spot on there for all the trustees
Okay,
to
good.
sign it.
All right. So all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Who has the original?
I have one that I think yours name.
I know, my name's on all of them. It's from the planning, it's a copy from the
Yeah,
planning. Who has the
whatever
original?
one you want to sign this evening, we'll work from that one.
Okay, so start one.
Yep.
I'll start
Jakes,
one.
go ahead and pass it
Start
down.
one, that's great.
That'll work.
Thank
Okay.
you for that. I
Thank you.
do appreciate
Thank
it.
you, Gary. Thank you, Jakes. I got a pen.
Yeah, I believe all three of them are original. You signed three so that we can
I did.
take it of the planning commission, the trustees, and the select
We
board.
have plenty of place to sign. Hey, thank you, Gary. That's great. And you're gonna be seeing the select board next week, so. Yeah. Okay. All right, moving on to item number 2, then, it would be the year-to-date financials, what information you might have, Scott.
So thank you. So we have been in an ongoing conversation with the auditors since our last meeting. I think the trustees had raised some issues and we needed to get some clarification. I was hoping to have the auditors update this evening for you, as well as the updated impact on the financials. We got an email this afternoon from our managing partner, as well as our audit manager, who has at least put together some preliminary analysis. There is going to be some journal entries to correct the current balance in the account, the due to due from account, which was in the sewer fund that we spent some time discussing at the last meeting. Those corrections so far that have been identified are positive to our current cash position. So I guess it's somewhat good news in the respect that it's improving our situation. We still have a substantial number of items that need clarification and update. So that $1.8 million number is roughly going to be at least $350,000 will be removed from that account balance. And then we'll have an additional analysis for you. I'm going to push to have it done for our next meeting so we can have a full explanation as to what's in that $1.2 million, where those various, and there's like 12 different journal entries and different items that I have to go through with the auditors to understand how expenses were classified or why things were put into that account, and then what the resolution would be for those so that you have an understanding of the impact on our operation. And then as it relates back to as the trustees had asked, how is that showing us in relationship to our operation? Are we meeting our targets? Are we cash positive? Are we still in a cash, are we still in a difficult position because we're not raising enough money based upon some of these items that some of these go back to 2017. So unfortunately, I don't have a full report on that this evening. So as opposed to giving you an update that was only partially corrected, we're going to work with the auditors, have a full written update from them that I will share with you. We'll have it available for discussion, and then we'll have an updated general fund that will show what those impacts are with some of the other items that we had discussed that evening as well, which also will be updated. So we'll have a full set of updated financials for that.
For the 23rd, then.
But your earlier comments were about the wastewater fund, right?
The big item right now, which was a lot of our conversation the last time, was specific to the wastewater fund.
Right.
The other items are more related to like COVID expenses and some other
General
items that we wanted to eliminate, part-time expenses that were put in the wrong line items, just sort of cleanup type items. Those aren't as difficult, but this is a larger number, and it kind of goes back to the larger conversation about where we were with rates, what our expectation was as to how that particular fund should be performing, and whether or not we're meeting the expectations. So I still can't give you a good sense of that right now until we get that additional detail, and then we will work through that with you and the auditors as well.
You mentioned a number of 1.8 million. That number doesn't ring a bell with me. I'm not sure.
I was just I think I was looking at the last meeting that we were talking about, And I believe that
The
was.
number was like a million, it was a
Million
little over a
one.
million.
It was a
over
million 175.
Yeah,
Yeah, it might have been
but
one.
there, but the previous month I had seen a number that was 800 some odd thousand.
Right.
So
Yeah,
it said
it
the
went up
same,
to, it
so,
went up to a
so we
million.
don't, yeah, so that would be
Correct.
great to have some, get a
Okay,
valid
all
number
right,
that we
so
can
that's,
go
that's
forward
fine.
with.
So it
That's
all
fine.
relates to that conversation.
Okay.
Yeah, all right.
Do you folks, do you guys have anything on this either?
But I was thinking we were talking about the 1.2 or.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It was
I
about-
misspoke on the
It was
It
numbers.
was like
I was
1,175,000
Yeah.
last.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
it was
exactly.
1,175. I think
Mhm.
Yeah.
that's from the prior meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
Typically, we had like every month we would have the budget numbers at the beginning of the month. For the last several months, we've gotten kind of off track on that, and I understand what you're saying right now, though I prefer to just see them at the beginning of the month, but this month it's
Right.
going to be at the end. As long as we get them one, so we can review for our, to, put our mind at rest that we're going where we need to go in the direction we need to move in, which is why we look at the numbers. We don't look at them the same way Shannon looks at them or the way you might look at them, but we do want to see that the budgeting that we've done is going along properly and things aren't getting out of whack. So
Right.
at some point, I'm assuming like by March, we get back on track that way, so that we can just have them routinely in order to give them a review before we get to a meeting with questions. Because we only meet, I'd rather not have each trustee sending significant questions on a budget. I'd rather just have the questions at one time for you so that we could get answers.
Sure.
Just to make it simpler for everyone and not lose productive time. Thank you. So that's all we have on the financials at this point. Second would be the update on the Memorial Park.
Yeah, so I'm going to give you
Number 3.
just we're done with, okay.
Yeah, we're done. Unless you have something else.
No, not on that. We're good on that.
Okay.
So this is it's not a complete rendering. This is still,
Oh, this is what Julie Maservi did. I think that's who did the work.
yes, the local.
Local architect. Cool. Landscape architect.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what this basically represents is the conversation that had really started back in 2019 and then sort of
Mhm.
continued into 2020. There had been some work done through landscape architect Julie Moore's the service firm was working on some designs. We were working with the hydro folks, and since they're in the FERC relicensing process, they weren't terribly interested in us doing a large improvement on their property on the right-of-way. So we had to scale back some of the initial design and sort of look at it as in phases. So all of the work that you see here being proposed is all on currently publicly owned land. So we're not encroaching upon any of the hydro land or any of the land that's owned by the folks that own the hotel currently. Couple of updates. There'll be some small updates just in terms of the locations of a couple of the benches and a couple of small items on this design. But this is the basic design that we're going forward with. The goal here, we did meet with the owners, asked them to work with us. They're interested and excited about the opportunity to work with us to improve not only this area, which abuts their property, but they've talked about doing some things on their property because they have an outdoor area that might be useful to them when we get back to the point of people are gathering for dining and what have you, and also being able to enjoy the views from that area. So I think it's gaining some positive momentum. We did apply for a grant, Better Places grant, which would just provide some support for the electrical work that would be necessary. The goal here is to try to light up this tree, which would be sort of a centerpiece, light up the flagpole, create some, appropriate pedestrian level lighting in and around the park there, so it has a better, more enhanced lighting footprint, and then work with the town for donations. We'll work with the highway department for some of the granite curbing and maybe some of the asphalt work, and then we'll also then finish off with some of the landscape plantings, and then the goal is to have this whole area completed and dedicated in time for the 40th anniversary of the fire, which goes, which will be December.
Mhm.
So it's still a work in progress, but it's taken on, I think, some good form. We were a little premature on the article in the paper. Both the fire chief and myself had asked if they could hold off a little bit on that just because we were still working on notifying some folks and a few other things. And the article came out before, hasn't done any real damage. It's just timing is, we're still trying to work everybody into the equation. There's a lot of people that want to participate. I think a lot of good momentum, and we just didn't want anybody to be caught, unaware or blindsided, thinking that we were just running ahead of the process. So I think we're in a good spot. This will be updated, and I think there'll be some additional fundraising. You'll start to see some activity, I think, through the fire department. And then we'll be back to talk about where we stand with, the budget and construction and impacts and what have you, to sort of get everybody on the same page before we actually start any kind of land disturbance or any kind of work on the site itself. So,
Well, it will be a revisioning of what it was in the 1980 Bellows Falls workbook, but it's a good idea. It never got off the ground, so I'm glad it's finally.
yeah, it seems like
Materializing.
this has some real good momentum. So, a lot of folks have stepped up and wanted to contribute time and donate resources, and that's tremendously helpful. Helps a project like this get going. If it's just all government, it tends to sort of get mired down in the muck. So
Yeah.
I think we're excited by where this could go.
And our fire department's doing a lot of this work, so volunteering their time and effort to make this happen. So
The,
yes, I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
Wade had his
Oh,
hand
go-
up
go
first.
ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I was
Okay.
just going to say on the streetscape, the lower, if that's what you call it, a streetscape, but the figures of the people, that's just showing somebody in the park, right? It's
Yes.
not a statue.
No.
No.
Okay.
No. Actually, you can sort of see the base, and there's a person standing near the flagpole, and then there's sort of in the foreground there would be just a rendering of what a potential base would look like for
Right.
one of the.
I just wanted to be sure that we weren't putting statuesques in there.
Oh, no. Yeah.
They've actually
So-
selected a design for a bronze. It's a pretty nice looking set of turnout gear with helmets and
Yeah,
I
it's
see.
a
That's
what I
nice, it's a
remember,
very
yep.
appropriate
Sure,
looking,
yeah.
nice.
At some point, we'll get some blow-ups and photographs.
Yeah,
of
we'll
them.
get a better update to that. I
Yeah.
think they want to get something in color that they can use for fundraising
Mm-hmm.
and sort of visualization. So that's why this one's stamped draft, and you can sort of see all the different elevations and what
Wait,
have you on there.
Yeah, I just have I'm just curious because I don't know the whole history of this, but probably Scott doesn't either. But were the families of the two firefighters, were they ever like involved in or been involved in any of
The
this?
way this started out was on the planning commission in 2019. We needed to come up in order to get a planning grant. Before, it used to be able to be utilized, like a $10,000 grant or something in that range was utilized for just doing like the town plan, which is all paperwork. The state decided that they wanted planning grants to actually involve something solid, something material that you can actually move forward on and actually take some shape. So we had to come up with a couple of ideas. Someone suggested the Vilas Bridge as a flower bridge. That didn't go for lots of reasons we understand. And the second one was I suggested that we use the old plan from the 1980 Bellows Falls workbook and use this. We needed a park. Bellows Falls doesn't have a center of any kind. Even Chester has a green, but we don't have a regular place that people can commingle when they're able to do that. This is all pre-COVID, of course. And so that was the idea that the planning commission was accepted, and we went forward with that, and we won it. And when we got the grant, the Bellows Falls Fire Department wanted to become involved because of the location, which had to do with the firefighters and the memorial. And so you would have to talk, but for that information, you'd probably have to talk to Sean.
Yeah, I was just curious if at any part in this process the two families were
I would expect that
involved at all,
stays.
like just in any any form or not.
I think there's been a lot of outreach to various people, and I know that some of the folks that actually responded that day are still actively involved in the planning. So I know they're very sensitive to all those issues.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I'll make sure that everybody's
just curious.
in the loop.
Thanks.
Tonight, we didn't have to have Sean here. He would probably know exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was involved in the first couple of meetings when they started, but after that, it's like,
Yeah.
They
no,
had
right.
they had their understanding and designing, and I was
Yep.
glad that everyone managed to get this far involved. It's great. Anything else? Moving on to number 4, then would be the wastewater update. A is on the sludge dryer.
Yep, so I'm going to give you just some updated statistics, and then we'll talk a little bit about some of the stuff going on with the plant.
Okay.
So this is just a little sort of summary of production. So we had the component pieces on site, end of November, early December. We had the system up and finally running right around the first of the year. So roughly to the 1st of February, we've actually had 23 days of actual operation. So where we've had the machine up and processing material. During that time, we've run 37.2 tons of wet waste through the dryer, and it came out when we were done with the processing, 9.5 tons of the dried material have come out so far and been captured for reuse. RMI is taking that material. That's part of their dispersal to local farmers. They have more than enough people who are interested in the material. We do not have yet the full Class A designation in terms of our biosolids and where we are. They're still tweaking the drying timing as well as how they handle the material. But I think they're very close. The material that they produced is reusable in terms of some of the local needs. So we're close. Just as one of the updates to the board, because I know that trustees were very concerned about the cost implication. We have not transported any wet material since our last, basically December load that we took out of the plant.
Mhm.
So nothing has left the plant since. The only cost right now that we have is we do have a container on site. DEC required us that as a backup in case the dryer fails for whatever reason or is not able to continue operation. We had to have a secondary source for disposal. So that's why we do have a container that we are still paying monthly rent on to our hauler. That's only a small amount of money, but the real savings are obviously when we do the loads to the landfill, and the costs vary on depending upon the weight of the material. But at this point, you're looking at a $4,000 to $7,000 per load cost for the disposal when we get to the site upstate. So since we haven't done anything in January, we're not anticipating any in February. Those are where the savings ultimately we'll have to look at, and then tie that back into what our costs are, which we're still putting together in terms of installation. We have some electrical that still needs to be completed in order to finish out all of our alarms and monitoring and some of the issues that we were talking about. So that we still need one more breaker in that dryer building in order to be able to put the alarm system through that as well, which I think I was talking with Rob. We're hoping to have that done in the next week or two. So at that point, I think we'll be fully operational on the updated alarms as well. So I'm hopeful to see the impact of that on our responses down to the plant for after hours alarm problems. One additional benefit, which I really didn't anticipate, and I don't know how we want to quantify this as we look at our evaluation of the process and whether we think it makes sense to go forward. There were 6,100 gallons of water that normally would have been transported as part of this process that then gets returned back to the headworks. So it does have some additional benefit outside of the cost of hauling the wet sludge. There is some additional reuse of that. It goes back through and is available for us then for additional processing. So at this point, we've only had 3 months, I think, based on the contract. I think we signed the contract the end of October with RMI. So we're only our implementation date for the actual 8-month operational period started sometime in early January. So we're still early in the process in terms of where we are. We're going to come back to you with a 90-day evaluation to see how we're doing. And then we'll have a follow-up probably again at the 180-day mark. And at that point, then I think we'll be hopefully in a position to then have all the information, gather whatever other additional analysis the trustees would like to see, so that when we hit that 9-month mark where we have to make a decision, I think we'll hopefully all be fully informed and ready to make a decision on if we want to continue or if we want to, return the machine and go in another direction.
Yeah.
So
I think we actually signed at the end of November, not October.
I think it was
Because I remember them talking about being worried about snow.
for some reason it's October 28th on the copy I looked
Does
at
it?
today.
Huh.
And I'll double check
I
it.
was thinking it was later than that, only
I
because
know,
of
I
the
thought
snow
so, too.
concern. Yeah. Interesting. Okay.
Anyway,
Well,
Based on the amount of waste that we produce, is it, are you saying it's not necessary that this run every day, or that it only runs part of a day, or what's the?
they're trying to find what the best window is for operating. They've run it as much as 9 hours in a day, and they've run it as little as 4 hours in a day.
Mhm.
So they're trying to tweak out, based on the material that comes through the plant, what's the optimum window for
Runtime.
processing for runtime. So we're not running it 24 hours at this point.
okay.
And I'm not sure it's really designed for that kind of use. I think it's really, more for type of, we don't run the plant full out 24/7 that way. So I think it's going to be interesting to see what our optimal window is. I think it'll probably be somewhere in that 6 to 7 hour range. I think that'll get us to the right composition for the Class A designation. And then it just becomes a question of how we can maintain that going forward and look at where that cost is versus what the cost is for the wet material to continue to haul. So we'll have some of that hopefully in greater detail at that 90-day mark. So
Additional questions?
I just had one. The monthly rental on the container,
yes.
is that something that, like, in a perfect world, if all this plays out the way it's supposed to, that'll go away? Or is this,
Well, I think the DEC is going to require us to have an alternate hauling no matter
backup.
what we do. And I don't think any hauler is going to sign a contract without us having some sort of monthly agreement for something to be on site. We'll try to get something where we could do it as an ad hoc kind of relationship. I'm not sure that's going to work. Most of these folks want you to take a dumpster and, they'll haul it when it's full.
Right.
Kind of.
I just didn't know if that was a requirement during this process or.
Well, they still want us to have a secondary source because then,
Yeah.
If something does happen and we're down for an extended period, we've got to have the ability to take the material out of the plant and take it to a disposal site. So
Okay. So has this already included the biosolid disposal piece?
yeah, we still don't have 100% like the Class A designation, since we've only done the 23 days of actual operation. They're still working on their percentages. I think the material that we were looking at the other day that I brought was actually drier, I think, than what they were ultimately hoping to be able to give.
Yeah, I
to
think
the
you said something
farmers.
about that. Yeah.
So they're still trying to find out what the right moisture level is going to be. So they're not there yet, but I think they'll get there. I don't think there's at this point any concern that they're not going to meet the standard. And I'm hoping that 90-day window will be able to tell you that they're there. And then we just have to see where we go for the next 90-day period, and then see ultimately where we want to be at the end of the evaluation period. So still some milestones to look at, and we'll make sure that we keep as much of the data as we can, so we give the board time for a full discussion and an opportunity to weigh in before we have to make a final decision.
Anything else? All good at this point?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, and I really would like to know what our total cost adjustments are for all
Yes.
this when we're done.
100%.
When all that's done.
Yep.
Including the last alarm. All right, that would move us on to the last item on the agenda, which
Oh,
is.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Uh, the other question that had come up a couple of meetings ago was the number of alarms that were going off at the plant.
Mm.
We had a discussion about the need to replace teeth or some kind of
Oh, yeah,
grinding
here.
types of
Yep.
things. Some, pretty, basic operational types of issues, both with the equipment as well as the alarms. And we were, I think we wanted to have you take a look at that and basically tell us what we spent all this money for, what didn't get done, what did get done, and what should be done. Because it's, as I said, I think our feeling was that the worst of it's behind us. I mean, we've now got to pay this debt off, but at least we've now upgraded this plant. And the impression was that we've moved it forward quite a bit, but not as far as we might have hoped. So
Yeah, so Rob
that's
and I
still
have-
a bit of, that's why the two-part, I don't even know what biosolid means, but the,
just a designation for the material,
Of the-
so it can be
yeah.
reused.
but
Right, that's the
my
class A.
secondary issue
Right.
outside of the dryer, obviously, which we're facing a purchase decision on, is the status of the plant and what are we looking at
Right.
going forward?
So Rob and I, since he finally came back full time this past week, so we've been able to spend some more time together. So just in a 10,000 foot view, and then we'll get into a more specific discussion at your next meeting. But when they approached the plant, they approached it in three different phases, right? So they had a headworks and septage receiving plan, which was the first phase, which they worked on. Then they had the secondary, that was roughly 2010, 2011 timeframe. About 2012 and 13, they were working on the secondary treatment areas and the RBC units themselves. And then finally, the last phase, which was 2016 and 2017, was the back end of the plant. So that's where all the money was spent. Now we're at a point where I've asked Rob to take a look at some of our operating assumptions from the engineers that when they did the original analysis, because I think what we're finding, and to your point, was that the alarms that are creating some of this overtime as a result of the screens, the fine screens, the grinders are wearing out faster than anticipated, right? So if they were replaced in 2010, I think they had originally thought that they would last 15 years. Well, we're finding that here we are in 2021 and we're having problems with them and they're worn out. So they didn't make 15 years. So there were some assumptions made from an engineering standpoint that based on plant operations in reality didn't hold true. So those are some of the things that I'm looking at with Rob to say I need to do some updates and come back to you and tell you where these units are. They have to be replaced. They cost about $16,000 a piece to pull these grinders out to put the new ones in. Ultimately, they might need 3 of them. So there has to be some additional work done. So I'll have a more detailed report on that as well. And we'll let you know where we are with the 3 different phases.
I remember
So-
now that Jake brought that up because we thought we paid for all of
Yeah.
those renovation or rehabilitation things in the
You did them in
bond.
stages, but I
Yeah.
think there's also,
So it's possible if they found some, when you get into a project and you find out, oh, now you need to do more here than you thought, you might sort of value engineer the project and remove some things that you think actually would last longer, like those,
right.
and in order to do the work. And so those are things that we wouldn't necessarily be aware of that occurred during the entire process.
Mhm.
So we have to do some work on that to give you a more comprehensive, tie back to what was originally done. And at some point, if we're at a point where we're not satisfied with some of the, I have not spoken to all the engineers yet that were involved in the original analysis.
Mhm.
At some point, when we pull our numbers together, I'll probably bring them in and say, are we not operating at the norm? Are we, is our experience unusual? We relied on some expertise from outside engineers to put these phases together and put this plan together. None of us are plant engineers, so you have to rely on some of their
Yeah.
expertise.
Oh, for sure.
So if we're not meeting what the end goals were, then I think it's incumbent upon us to sort of bring them back to the table and say, where did we miss, or what are we doing, or can you give us some input as to why we're not seeing maybe what we had hoped at this point, with a significant amount of investment. We have a $20 million asset down there. We spent probably close to, well, I think our liabilities are over 10 million if I remember from the last set of financials. So obviously we've made some significant investments. I think it's, a reasonable thing to ask, and we'll try to give you a better understanding of where we are.
And we are coming into budget season, so obviously
And
it's
Yeah.
the time is right. I still think,
Get a handle on that.
the other thing I'll just throw out again, and I'm not sure if I'd mentioned this to you before, but I keep looking at we have 4 people that work at the sewer treatment plant. They all come in at 6:30 in the morning and go home at 2:30 in the afternoon. It just seems like, I know it doesn't run 24/7 or whatever type of thing, but it would seem as though, with 4 people, you might want to have, better coverage for a longer period. I mean, unless these guys are, digging out stuff or something, from 6 until 2. But anyway,
Yeah, we'll take a look at-
I just think that particularly with these alarms, I mean, it's, you get tagged with these alarms, and it's sort of like, well, Jesus, maybe we should keep somebody, stagger the shift.
Well, there was some assumptions made on operations and maintenance, and obviously that gets more into the operations side as opposed to the maintenance side. But I think it's important to ask those questions.
It's both, yeah.
And try to find out the answers, right? I'm seeing the maintenance is maybe higher than what it was anticipated when we started this, and maybe the operations might be as well. So we'll get into that and make
Well,
sure
we
that
know the labor costs are running higher than,
Yeah, we need
budget,
to have a
so.
more robust conversation about all of that so that we're all on the same page. So still doing some digging. It'll take some work to get you the answers that you need.
You all set?
I'm sorry, I'm all set.
No, I realized that was one you wanted to cover and it wasn't on there, so. Let me see. So that moves us on to additional information about 9 Barker Street.
Yes, so since we last met, we did discuss, that was one of the distressed properties that the trustees were interested in seeing some action. So since our last meeting, we did have some folks come out and, at least on that property as well as on 66 Atkinson, begin the process of looking at environmental contamination issues, specifically asbestos at both of those locations. So we started the process for getting an asbestos survey returned. And really the point of that being is, no matter what we do going down the road, either cooperatively with the current owners or in some other fashion as we go forward, we need to know what those numbers are going to be. They have a significant impact on how we would try to move forward with these properties into the future. So we did last Friday go on site, get some samples. They're off to be evaluated, and we should have a report hopefully soon. I'm not sure by your next meeting because the labs run a little slower than that, but I think probably by your March meeting, or maybe even if they're really slow, by the joint meeting, to get some analysis back and some ideas of what it might take in terms of removal. And I think that adds, a huge piece to the discussion about how we move forward. So that is underway.
At this point, the asbestos reporting, is that town or village cost?
Well, we did it through the health officer right now,
Which is town at this point?
which would be at this point.
Okay.
And again, if it's, reimbursable down the road, it'll come through some
Yeah.
some future.
And now that we did it for both properties?
He did do both on Friday.
Okay.
So we'll see what comes back.
Yeah.
We'll definitely continue that conversation.
Okay. Anything further on that
Well,
property?
the 9 Barker Street where the burned out place that
Yeah,
shows, it just doesn't look safe. And, I think we were told that unfortunately, the insurance had lapsed, or the owner didn't have insurance on it, which is a crime, a pity. But is the owner still involved? Is he trying to come up with a plan to remove what's there, or is that?
Well, I think there's a hope that they'll be cooperative, but there's also, I think, a reality is once we get these numbers, I think it's probably going to be overwhelming in terms of
Overwhelming,
what
yeah.
they can afford to do.
Mhm.
But, I don't really want to, we'll just have to see when we get to that point.
Right.
And then I think we'll at least be able to talk about real numbers and then what our options will, their options might be, and then whether or not we do other things going forward. So that'll hopefully, set the stage for that.
Okay.
But I agree. It needs to,
Yeah.
it needs to be worked on and resolved in some way.
I'm always concerned about the air quality surrounding a building that's had a fire, especially if there's asbestos involved or,
Never good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a concern.
okay. Anyone else? All right. I'm sure I ask. Review agenda items for the next meeting, which is February 23rd. I believe the financial issue, you brought that up as an item for the agenda.
Yep.
The budget schedule, I guess.
Yeah. We'll have
Budget
that.
schedule,
Yep.
calendar.
Yep.
Okay. I wanted to have a conversation with the trustees concerning adding an article, considering starting a conversation about adding an article on our annual meeting for the marijuana retail and the what is it, the option tax, the
Local
local
sales
option
tax
tax,
option.
sales tax.
Right.
Because essentially, having a retail business is going to be here in the central business district of Rockingham, which is Bellows Falls. Number two, there's legislature, there's some stuff in the House or Senate, I can't remember which right now, a bill asking to consider that if nothing goes on, if a town or village does not make that determination by next year's March meeting, then we won't have an option. So if we don't do anything, let's ask the voters. If it's a yes or no, it is what it is. But if we don't do anything, you won't have any option when and if it happens, because you can't refuse to allow them to come here, but you can't receive any benefit if that's what the residents want to do from the sale of those products. So
Right, that 1% would not be available to you.
right, exactly,
Right.
after March 22. Essentially. So I think the question is worth asking. I think it's something we could discuss, to simply start a discussion at our next meeting. If we as village trustees would like to see that as an article on our warning and allow the voters to make that determination.
Mhm.
So that's,
Well, I think
I'd like to have, like that to be an item on the agenda.
One of the questions that I think is on all of our minds is by taking the action that would allow us to have a 1%, say a 1% local sales tax or something, does that impose the requirement that if you do it to one business, you have to do it to all businesses, or can you?
And it might be.
My understanding is it applies to anything that's sales tax eligible. So
Mhm.
once you request a local option, it applies across.
So it affects all
Across the
businesses.
board.
They can't be singled out.
Correct.
I understand.
That's usually the way things work.
Yeah.
Is you can't single them out.
Right, so then it would whatever effective date that would be, then all businesses would be taxed at 1%.
So
I'm not
that's,
necessarily looking forward to it, although I don't provide retail. I'm a service business, but the fact is, it would affect all of our current retailers. And again, do we want, if it's on there, it can still be voted down. It's just a matter of, there will be no option for that if we want that.
Yeah, I think
if
that
voters
road is
want that.
closed after.
Yep. After March 22.
Yep.
So that's it, just worth discussion.
well, having it on an agenda for people to discuss, I think
Yeah.
is
Brings an opportunity for other retail businesses to speak to us about it,
Yeah.
how they feel about it. It's worth the conversation. Anyone else have anything right now that they want on the February 23rd agenda? That's in 2 weeks. Of course, you can always let me or Scott know. review the agenda items for the joint board meeting, which is March 30th. Right now on there is the Depot Street Bridge, Memorial Park, assistance to the firefighter grant. I would like to include the AV discussion because now that we have a committee member for the working group from the select board, that's Stefan Golick. Then that of course might be if he's still on the board after the March elections. But currently he is the working group. And we haven't done anything to even have a first meeting yet. So I'd like to have a joint board discussion about it.
Okay.
And Scott and I just participated, was it Monday? Yeah, yesterday. In an hour and a half long AV discussion with a number of vendors as well as legislators and so on and so forth. I'm sorry?
I was in on the second.
Were you? There were 501 participants. I was shocked to see how many people were on there.
Yeah, it was an interesting conversation.
Yeah.
So,
Let's see. Then we would review orders and approve the orders, bills, and warrants. We haven't seen those in a while. I need a motion for that.
I'll move it.
All right, need a second? All right, and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, and we'll pass these down. People get to sign them. Other business. Scott,
no, I'm good.
Jigs,
No, I'm good.
I think I'm good this evening.
I don't have anything.
Okay. No need for an executive session. I want everybody to be safe. It's not a lot of snow, but it's slick out there, so. Yeah, greasy.
That's a good way to describe it.
Yeah, greasy. All right, so, do I need to leave the meeting open while we sign these? I don't think so. So I needed a motion to adjourn.
I'll move that we adjourn.
All right,
I'll second that.
okay. All right, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, and we are out, and thank you very much.